Hello everyone, my name is Sol Valchez and welcome to this Threshold review. Today we're going to be taking a look at Burbank by Orbx. In this review, we're going to be going over the textures, the modeling, the accuracy, the atmosphere, the performance, and the price of the airport. And at the end of that, we're going to throw everything together and rate this airport out of 10, with 10 being the best and 0 being the worst. I'm really excited to get into this review, so let's get started. The first thing that we're going to look at is textures, but before we get to that, a quick disclaimer. This video is being recorded on high-end settings, but the review of all textures was done in maxed out settings. So that means right now you're looking at high-end, but when I was reviewing this, I put on ultra settings. And this is because as you decrease your texture settings, the resolution of the textures drops in order to increase performance. So that is why I have my textures down a little bit now, since I'm recording in order to get a smooth experience. And this is also the settings that I fly with as well. However, when I was reviewing this, I made sure that everything was on high to make sure that there was no mistake in my judgment as to the resolution of textures. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the textures. Orbx has done a pretty good job on the textures for this scenery, with a few minor hiccups, but we'll start with the good and move on from there. The textures surrounding the area near the terminal are all done relatively well, so that is right over here. We're going to get up closer right now so that I can show you a few examples as we go through. But this is what I'm talking about when I say the textures surrounding the terminal. When you are a healthy distance from these textures, their color and sharpness comes out really well, and you can see that right here. Concrete looks like concrete, metal looks like metal. So if you're someone who doesn't like to go on tour around the airport, this scenery checks all the boxes for you right out of the box. So if you're not somebody who likes to go around the airport and you like to just arrive at the gate and leave the gate and take off from the airport, then this is a really great scenery. However, when you get closer, the lower resolution of these textures does come to light, which can take away from the realism of the scenery. For instance, here at B3, when you're relatively far away, like we are right now, the resolution of these textures looks really fantastic. However, as you move forward and approach the terminal, like this, the lower resolution of the textures becomes obvious, and in my opinion, a little bit distracting. It makes the airport feel less natural, since the resolution is lower. You can see that right here. When you are farther back from B3, you can see that these textures look really solid. But as you get closer, you can see that the texture resolution is starting to die off a little bit, and these concrete textures are starting to look a little less impressive. The same thing applies when you aren't at the gate. From a distance, the textures look fantastic, but as you approach them, the lower resolution of the textures comes to light and the realism begins to fade away. However, this is not something I am particularly bothered by, considering the fact that unless, as I said earlier, you like to take regular tours of the airports, this is not something you will notice straight away, if at all. One thing that does confuse me, however, is it seems that the air traffic control tower has a higher resolution texture than those surrounding it. Let me show you up close. So now that we're closer to the air traffic control tower, it looks like these textures have a higher resolution, because when I zoom in and I get this close to the textures, these still look relatively decent, and we are a pretty close distance from the air traffic control tower. However, when I zoom into these textures, their lower resolution really comes out. I'm not entirely sure why this is. Perhaps it's to highlight the tower, perhaps they happen to have a higher resolution texture available for the tower, who knows? Perhaps you can let me know in the comment section if you have any idea. I would really love to know. But regardless, if I am right about this nuance, it's a bit odd and it makes me confused as to why the rest of the airport's textures did not follow suit with the air traffic control tower, which looks absolutely fantastic. We're back at gate B3 here, and we're going to talk about the ground vehicles as well. I feel like the ground vehicles are a hit or a miss. Some of them have great high resolution textures, while others are rather poor. A great example of this I found while looking at this airport to review was the GPU unit right here. This looks really great, regardless of the distance you are from it. We're really close to it right now, and it looks super solid. Granted, it's not amazing, but ground vehicles are not necessarily a priority when it comes to making sure they have high resolution textures. However, if we go right here, which is right nearby the GPU where this luggage tote is, you can see that it's not done too well, and you can even see that from this distance right here, and you can see it even if you're closer here. You can see how the textures are not that high resolution. I think the ground vehicles would feel a lot more complete if they all had similar resolution textures, so if this matched the GPU unit. By and large, the ground textures are fine. It appears that Orbx is using the default ground textures here, which is okay, but I wish that they had used their own, especially seeing what Orbx has done in other sceneries with their own ground textures before. I find the default textures rather stale and lacking vibrancy and life. However, they used the default textures in the best way they could, and I cannot fault them for that. I did not find any major issues with the way that they used the default textures. One thing I have really liked that Orbx has done is that they've added their own taxiway signs. This is something I have not seen until this point and was really pleasantly surprised to discover. Like the ground textures, I found the default taxiway signs rather bland, so seeing some diversity really helped to bring the airport to life in my opinion. The taxiway signs have high enough resolution textures that you can see them easily from any distance you would reasonably need to see them. In my personal opinion, the taxiway signs meeting that criteria is all that they need for me to be happy with them. And let me just show you that really quickly. Right now we're fairly close to this sign. However, if you go back quite a distance, you can still see that sign pretty well. And this is really the farthest distance that you're actually going to be able to need to read this sign. Lastly, for the textures, I would have liked to see a little more attention added to the hangars on the other side of the airport. That's where we are at right now. Although Burbank is not commonly used for cargo, it's not known as a cargo airport, unlike other airports. Some customers may have purchased the scenery in order to utilize this aspect of the airport, meaning some people may have wanted to fly to this airport specifically for cargo. And if that's the case, I think that they will likely be disappointed, because this part of the airport was not given as much love as the main terminal. You can see that right here with the AV jet. This has a very low resolution right here. You can also see that with the FedEx. It's not as bad, but as you get closer to it, and this is probably a distance that you would normally be from the hangar, you can see that the resolution is rather poor. So, in summary, the texture resolution and the textures used around the airport are solid. It's nothing to write home about, but it definitely gets the job done. Now that we have taken a look at the textures, it is now time to move on to the modeling. Unlike the airport's textures, there is very little to say about the modeling, and that's not a bad thing. That's because this airport is modeled really well. Almost every object looks exactly as it does in real life, which is what you want to hear when purchasing a custom airport. Every building replaces the default objects really well, and the attention to detail on every building is absolutely a strong suit. There are only two weaknesses with the modeling, and the first is here at the AV jet and FedEx hangars once again. The poly count on the roof is rather low, which, when you're not at a distance, detracts from the scenery's realism. You can see that right here on the roof. Though, like the texture resolution being lower in this area, this is likely a performance saver, since Orbx probably thinks that the majority of those who purchase this airport are only purchasing it to fly in and out of the terminal. The second weakness is in the taxiway signs, which clearly have the same low poly count as the hangars. You can see that right here. But the taxiway signs are not extremely important in the grand scheme of things, and if you want to have an airport with decent performance, this is a trade-off you will likely need to accept in not just Burbank, but other airports as well. Overall, the modeling detail and accuracy of Burbank is really well done, save for the things that I mentioned, and the attention to detail is commendable. Save for one major detail, Burbank is highly accurate. I have zoomed out for you now to show you what I am talking about. Notice the runways and how they vary in texture. Here on runway 26, we have all the asphalt until the very end where it appears that concrete takes over. That is accurate with real life, as you can see here in the top right-hand corner of your screen. However, runway 33 is very inaccurate. Instead of following the contours of the real-world airport, it appears that Orbx has portrayed the runway as mostly concrete, save for where runway 33 intersects with runway 26, that is right here. This inaccuracy, in my opinion, is far from an oversight, as multiple images, including the satellite imagery in the top right-hand corner that I am showing you, show that the runway does not follow the contours which Orbx has made them appear to follow. Now let's get into the atmosphere. Unlike Santa Barbara, Burbank appears to not have any ground traffic movements. While writing the script for this review, which took about an hour, I placed myself above the airport and observed it. Save for live traffic, I did not see a single moving object at the airport. This is rather disappointing, especially since Orbx has utilized this for Microsoft Flight Simulator before, and having movement to an airport, besides the default jetways, adds a high level of realism and atmosphere. Like I have said many times, however, this likely comes down to performance. If this is the case, I think it can be excused. However, if Microsoft Flight Simulator allows scenery developers to utilize scenery customization options, like X-Plane and P3D do, then I definitely think that Orbx should consider making ground traffic a customizable feature for Burbank. In order to demonstrate the performance, we are going to take off in the Cessna 172 and do a brief flight over the airport before touching on the price and wrapping up this review. So let's start the engines, get onto the runway, take off, and we'll talk about performance. As we're taxiing around the airport, we're getting really solid performance. I haven't had any frame drops since leaving the ramp where the Cessna 172 started. We have been faced away from the terminal though, so as we turn right now and head towards the terminal again, we'll see how the performance stacks up there. But overall, really great so far, and having no stutters is a great sign for performance. So we're about to begin that right turn now as we line up with the runway. So let's begin it. And I don't know if it showed up on your screen, but there was a little minor stuttering right there, but it was nothing insane, and it seems like we have completely recovered since then. We are running nice and smoothly right now, and I'm getting a great responsiveness on my rudder pedals. Now that we've gone over all of that, we're going to add some throttle, take on off, make a left turn to circle back around the airport, see what kind of performance we get, then we will cover the price of the airport. As we continue in the takeoff roll, we're still having some really solid performance here. No lag spikes at all. It seems like it is slowing down a little bit, but as I've said before, it's nothing that is inhibiting my control of the aircraft. I'm still having really great responsiveness on that. Now we've rotated out of the airport, having some similar performance here, where it seems like it has gone down a little bit, but it's not exponential to the point where it would get annoying. Another thing to keep in mind as well is that I am recording this using OBS, and OBS takes some performance off of the Flight Simulator to me. It's about 5 frames per second at the most. So we're going to begin this left-hand turn, and as we continue the left-hand turn, it looks like we are also having some really solid performance as well over here, and in my experience, we will also have some great performance as we turn back towards the airport and fly over it. And it seems like that is exactly what's happening. As we turn back towards the airport, we're having some great performance here and having absolutely no problems flying the aircraft, which is fantastic. So now that we're in the air and we've covered performance, now we're going to talk about price. So I like how Orbx has been pricing their products lately. The price of airports seems to be influenced by both the demand for the airport and the size of the airport itself. However, in the case of Burbank, I do not think that the $18 US price tag is justified. Although the airport is modeled really well, the shortcomings of the airport, such as the runway inaccuracies, good, but not great texture resolution, and the use of default textures for the taxiways and runway stand out a little bit too much for the airport to be $18. I think knocking $3 off the price would bring this airport to a very, very competitive level. With that said, I think that Orbx may have made the airport this price because of the place they intend to bring the airport. I think that they want Burbank to be its P3D cousin at some point. However, right now it is not that, and it is therefore not worth the $18 for a casual Burbank flyer. But if you often fly in and out of Burbank, or you want to practice at Burbank, or whatever, this scenery is a massive improvement from the default, and might be worth considering if you are willing to lose $18 from your wallet. Finishing off this video, I believe that there are many aspects of this scenery that are great, and many that are also lackluster. If Orbx takes the time to address the gripes I have with the scenery, I will easily recommend it to anyone, even the casual flyer. But as it stands, I believe you should only be considering Burbank if you know that you will be flying in and out of the airport frequently. Otherwise, wait until Orbx have properly updated the airport to reach its full potential. So with that said, I believe that this airport is a solid 8 out of 10, and with the right updates, it will be very competitive for a 10 out of 10 score. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like, and if you would like to see more videos like this, consider subscribing. Let me know in the comments section, do you think that my review was fair? Do you think that I have made the right decision giving this scenery an 8 out of 10? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and I would love to respond to them. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great one.